Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the HR and Payroll 2.0 podcast. I'm Pete Tiliakis, and it's just me this time. I've got a special episode here. My good friend, Ciaran Strachan from the, I'm going to say this right, Institute of Payroll Management, formerly the Australian Workforce Compliance Council. It's a mouthful. You might remember Cairan from our podcast where we talked about the rise of the Chief Payroll Officer and some of the work that's being done, just the groundbreaking work, really, that's being done over in Australia to rethink of payroll in a new light, right? To create a profession for the payroll industry, but also to work closer with the universities to credentialize payroll on par with attorneys and accountants, bring degrees together that are specific for the payroll body of knowledge. That's also something that they're doing a lot of work on is building the payroll body of knowledge that hopefully will set the stage for what Australia is doing and maybe even translate to other countries and maybe even the globe. So Cairan was really kind to let me really record our private conversation. And I'm really proud and happy to share this work that he's doing. I think what he's doing is so much needed. It's very groundbreaking, and it could set the tone for the way we treat and credentialize payroll globally. And I hope that it does pave the way. So if you appreciate this, let me know. I'd love to see your thoughts on this. I'm trying to do a little bit more of these, maybe just provide you a fly on the wall opportunity to listen in on some of the conversations I have with the leaders around the industry. And Cairan is one of them that is doing just some really cool work that I love to stay close to and I'm helping with myself. So yeah, if you like this, let me know. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And look, as always, as I mentioned, I think we talked about this on a previous episode. We're doing big things in 2026, and we thank you so much for being a part of it so far. We hope you stick and stay with us. And if you could take a moment to subscribe to the show, if you don't already, to share it, to like an episode, to give us a rating, just anything that you can do to acknowledge engagement with the podcast, we would really appreciate it. Look for our social media posts if you want to comment there. We're always open to feedback. And yeah, we really appreciate you. I hope you appreciate this content. And shout out to Ciaran Strachan and the work he's doing over there at the IPM. They are really trailblazing a new path for payroll. And I just personally think very highly of it. So enjoy this one. And we will be back soon with more episodes with Julie and I. Cairan, good to see you, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to record this update. So thank you for that, man. I want to create a little bit of a fly on the wall opportunity for our guests and just shine a light on what you're doing over at the AWCC. So maybe get started by just introducing yourself quickly. Maybe some folks have listened to the Blast podcast. I'll pop it in there, the link for those that haven't. But yeah, tell us about what you do and what's going on over there at the AWCC.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Pete, for having me, and hello, everyone. For those that haven't, I recommend you perhaps look at our last podcast that Pete just referred to. That will give you our background. The short of it is, due to a lot of research where we were looking at various different solutions for wage theft, what I identified several years ago, and we're embarking on a permanent journey now going forward, is really bridging a skilling and education gap for payroll. So we're even going through a name change right now. It's official. We'll be coming out of the gate with a new website, member value proposition. Everything will be known as IPM, the Institute of Payroll Management. And the reason why I'm on Pete's show is I reached out to Pete recently after listening to his payroll confidence survey results and discussions he had with, say, the CIPP, Jason Davenport, and so on. I'm actually writing a paper right now with government that will be released. It'll be our foundational paper, and that paper is called Creating Australia's Payroll Profession. It has research in there and recommendations that will have an international impact. And I'm referencing similar issues in the US and UK, and I've kind of stopped there because I think these are worldwide issues that we've got to address.
Yeah. So the new brand, IPM, you'll go from the Australian Workforce Compliance Council now to the
Institute of Payroll Management. Yeah, and our new
Institute of Payroll Management. Okay.
Exactly. And our new purpose is also our motto, which is building, skilling, and educating the payroll profession.
Yeah. So you guys, obviously, again, I know we went through a lot of this in the original podcast, but what I wanted to do today was really just get an update on where the AWCC is, or the IPM. Congratulations on that new branding. I'll have to get that through my head. But what's the mission at the IPM? What's the progress you guys have made? Because you had some lofty goals, right? We were talking about a lot of things. And why is this so necessary now? I mean, I understand the complexities of Australian payroll, right? You guys have some serious strict laws when it comes to errors and things like that are not like others. You've taken a very progressive attitude towards education and credentialing, but talk to me a little bit about what the IPM is really trying to do.
Yeah, certainly. So, in fact, it's broken up into those three areas. And a lot of what you've just mentioned briefly, I hear a lot and have heard a lot for several years. Payroll's complex. There's a lot to it. We have a lot of laws. That's great. But then I hear things also such as from what I call intermediary professions, such as HR, lawyers and accountants, and concerning things from particularly those working in the payrolls, what I call the C-suite in a payroll capacity, stating that some of those other ones are problems. We don't have access to degrees. And what I started with during my original analysis about 4 years ago, which then concluded, wow, we aren't a profession, and I'll discuss what that means in a moment, is that that's all generated by this particular issue that we aren't a profession and what that means. And I started Googling what is a profession, and it just went from there, is the short of it. So,
and you've made some progress there.
We have. So identified exactly in every country, including, and I've got the information up here for the US, for your US viewers, what a profession is in two categories. One is the skilling and education requirements in pretty much every country. And the other one is what makes up and is legally known as a profession. Now, what's interesting is payroll in the US as well as Australia. Not too sure about the UK, but I think it's similar. We are what's called a paraprofession, right? So in the Australian Bureau of Statistics, now that is where professions are held in the equivalent in every country. So in the US, it's called the SOC, which is the US Bureau of Labour Statistics.
Yep.
You are also classified as a paraprofession down in a series under admin and clerks. Now, that has massive repercussions that you're not aware of until you get into some deep diving stats.
Yeah. Still shows up in my research in the disrespect part of this profession. Yeah. No, it's still rearing its head.
That's right. Now, where HR has pivoted into our job family in around the mid-2000s, and it started in the US earlier in the 90s, was they created something called a BOK, Body of Knowledge, and that was championed primarily through the HR Institute. I think they're called HRCI, because you've got a couple in the US. Now, Australia grabbed onto that in 2006 when they launched ARI, Australian Human Resource Institute. It just had an 86th birthday, but it's not 86 years old. It went insolvent in the 80s, and a private right-wing group bought it in 2006, and they just bought the IP. Now, they purchased the US HR's Body of Knowledge. Now, Body of Knowledge is incredibly important because without that, you can't put in a case to any country's labour statistics or equivalent. Australia's called the Australian Bureau of Statistics, to become what's called a profession. You can climb the ladder a bit in paraprofessions, and that's what I've managed to achieve with what we've got and doing the first survey on what we actually do. So I got Payroll Manager created, and that went live in 6th of December 2024, but one level below profession was still a paraprofession, right?
So payroll is now a profession in Australia?
No.
Fundamentally, no, it's not.
So you've got 5 classifications. Skill level 1 is a profession. Now, the prerequisites for that are a degree. Must have a degree. And this is where it links back to a BOK. You can't create a degree pretty much in any country unless you've got a BOK, because the nature of education switches from, for lack of a better term, follow the bouncing ball. So in Australia, you got certificates 1, 2, 3, 4, diploma, advanced diploma. And that's all about different levels of on-the-job skilling, but you're all paraprofessionals, right? Which means you technically, if you Google paraprofessional, you must be supervised by a professional. To write a degree at any level, so you talk associate, bachelor's, Red Cert, Grade Dick, master's, or PhD, also known as a terminal degree, that has to be derived from a body of knowledge, and you then apply critical thinking. So that's why you shift to assignments. So this is where it goes full circle, right? Now, because HR has had this leg up on us for 26 years, it invented something which excluded, which was a deliberate attempt to exclude unions, and in turn for that, that's where they petitioned into payroll, called employment relations. And you would have heard of this term. I had to study it in strategic HR. I had to study it in IR.
Yes.
So you would have heard of ER. Now, ER is a right-winger narrative to undermine the unions. And because of that, and you've got to remember too, is that right-wing is all about deregulation. That means it's always had a target on payroll. Now, it doesn't, this is the other aspect that we've got to remember, doesn't matter what you vote for or what your personal views are. You have to understand the lay of the land when you get into who's in the C-suite, why they credentials, and so on. Now, HR manager is separate in, so that's the OSCA, that's the skilling database in Australia. It is, I've just looked it up in the SOC for the US, it is a separate line under management. Now, I managed to get payroll manager created in the ABS through the research survey, and that we did have a diploma. Diploma is skill level 2, so that's one below. It's about as high as you can go as a paraprofessional. In the UK, after you chat with Jason Davenport, and I think the CIPP is probably the gold standard currently in the world.
Yeah, they're very mature compared to a lot of the national organizations in terms of what I think they've been able to do with the government, right, and get that education credentialed.
They are, and they're a properly structured non-for-profit, which you've got to be because it means you work on the professional full time and you're not conflicted, right? So you're not worried about what your competitors think because you don't really have any. However, I looked at their quals, and I'd love to chat to Jason in a year or two, but I suspect they've hit the same problem. So yes, they have a foundational degree, but it's a general business degree. Yes, they have a master's degree, but it's generic. Whereas in HR, you've got bachelor's and master's degrees just in HR, right?
Right. I have a bachelor's degree in HR.
There you go. Right. So now that's able to be done because of the BOC. So that's one of the deliverables we're looking at next. I've already mapped the domains. We've got stakeholders. We've got 4 universities on that panel.
That's great.
We're working with the federal government right now, and this paper is going to the federal government because the vocational education sector, which is the non-uni sector that non-university sector that usually does those certs 1, 2, 3 and diplomas, can also do degrees. And I was just told last week that our submission, so we did another one that's no one's seen in January, to say we want a review of a diploma and we want that upgraded to an associate degree, and we've mapped it out. Now, we got the funding allocation, not us directly, but the federal government did, to pay for a person full-time to review that diploma and update it. And this foundational paper I'm putting together right now, which has these international recommendations as well, centres around the BOC and then capabilities and what we call knowledge domains. So we have entry-level, intermediate and advanced. And they're the 2 certifications I'm drafting right now with our primary contractor. One's a new entry-level one. There is no entry-level qualification for payroll in Australia right now. And the current diplomas, the information that we've had back from the providers that have said it's too hard. So we have an industry panel and a key couple of payroll managers on there that I've spoken to individually, and they've said, let's go down the route of a micro-credential stack. So you get someone new, you onboard them early, we'll punch out those micro-credentials, and then they get an entry-level certification, and then we'll use an intermediate one while we're working in the background with this. It's going to be called, or I'm proposing it be called an associate degree in payroll.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. I think there's a tremendous value in people having a depth in that compliance, obviously, right? And compliance and governance and all the things that come with managing payroll operations. What I hope is that we're pairing strategic thinking and analytic thinking and data science and the things that are going to create business leaders for the future. Because I think that's really what I'm trying to communicate with my research is, hey, look, payroll leaders and HR leaders are business leaders, and you're not treating them that way. And by the way, they have this tremendous responsibility and data set and expertise that if you leaned into, you could get real strategic value from. So I hope that those degrees are going to consider that and not entirely functionalize their work and draw out that big 4 consulting sort of skill set that payroll is going to need to have in the future.
Yeah, and that's the good thing about a BOC. So think of a BOC as a mechanism or a conduit or a filter. And that's where it really thrives, and that's where it's really important to anchor a BOC behind an industry. And one of the BOCs, I know I've mentioned this to you because I've looked at a few different ones. How would we structure it? What's a good starting point? Is the PMI, Project Management Institute.
Yes, I was going to say that's the one I'm most familiar with. Is the Project Management Body of Knowledge.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So you contribute to various things. So I want to give an example. We're actually going to have 2 strategies for rolling out certification, and that's because the research has indicated we really have 2 camps of payroll in Australia. I don't know what this would be internationally, but we actually have one camp that sits heavy on the tax side, and that's for small business. So small business in Australia employs about 43% of all employees.
Yeah.
Big business, and this is where we use the box. So really the current diploma level education we have available for payroll is adequate for small business. And that will also enable us to opt into something called the TPB, Tax Practitioners Board, which is a registered regulating organisation for tax practitioners. And we'll be the first payroll entity to do that.
Nice.
So that's a kind of equivalent in the US as a licensing scheme for like you have for state engineers and so on.
it sounds a little bit similar to the way, I mean, if you look at United States, a lot of the payrolls, small payrolls are done by CPAs, right?
Yeah.
Accountants who are doing business accounting for a firm, but also will often take on their payroll as well because they've only got a few folks and maybe, they don't know what they're doing. So they'll, use them. And then often they have proxy capability to use whatever the provider is that the customer's taken on. But so kind of similar in some ways to how a lot of the work gets done, not necessarily the way we do it. So
that's right. And for the big end of town, what we call it, the C-suite, so just big business, that's where the block will carry that through with what do we want. Now, we're going to introduce a term to deliberately counter employment relations called PR or payroll relations, and that we'll define that ourselves. We'll take back payroll from ER and say it is end-to-end life cycle management of payroll, including all forms of contractual agreements. Now, in Australia, they're primarily called enterprise agreements. And there is a huge push behind that. And some of the research I've shown, and you'll find this interesting, Pete, because I know you're championing the chief payroll officer. And I was kind of a fence sitter when we last spoke. I said, look, not really sure if we should have it. So I'm 100% pushing that agenda now. I want a chief payroll officer, and we already have them. The problem you've got, and I have someone's CV I can use as an example, and how I came across these guys accidentally was looking at who was signing on behalf of employers' enterprise agreements. Plus, we're speaking heavily with the unions about a controls framework in and around enterprise agreements to safeguard the life cycle. And also use it as a point of clarification for any agreement issues, which is a huge risk management capability that payroll can provide. It basically prevents class action and other litigation by unions. And I found these CVs of people that had payroll officer, payroll manager for 20 years. Suddenly they're finally in the C-suite, and guess what they have to call themselves? Chief HR officer. So you see my point there. I'm like, well, why are we doing this? Why are we falsely stamping over what someone's actual proper designation is in the C-suite?
I don't know that it's going to be for every organization. I definitely think the enterprise has to consider it. When you think about the P&L hit, right, it's the largest number on the P&L is payroll, right? It's the biggest risk. I say this all the time. In America anyway, outside of accounting in a big four, or excuse me, in a massive publicly traded company, the only process that's going to get the C-suite put in prison is payroll. It's the only one. HR, you might litigate some hurt feelings and pay a lawsuit, but it'll never go to court, and at the end of the day, you'll probably survive as long as it wasn't, harmful. But payroll is a different story, man. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, they'll put locks on the doors.
That's right.
And it's not a game.
And that's exactly right. Where I'm coming from too, which is quite interesting, is we have a lot of support from all those intermediaries because they say, well, we're not getting the skilling and education we need. And I've kind of
the respect to even get the right education and the right resources.
That's right. And a lot of HR people have pushed this apple cart, including me, with the Australian Human Resource Institute and like institutes. But this is where I found out the reason why. So I've looked at the speeches by past presidents when they set it up. They don't want skilling and education in and around labour law because that's seen as a left-wing agenda. So they're just pushing a generic. We don't want people to know too much about payroll, and I've even got evidence of deliberate attacks on anyone that's tried to get better skilling and education in there from universities. So these are confidential discussions I've had with university lecturers saying we only teach one unit on labour, and that's under attack. I've had to get an academic paper published. This is another interview I had with another one and it was a great paper, and I've referenced it in some of my material where it showed how employers have evaluated HR, business, and any other degree related, saying we just want more labour law stuff so people know how to do payroll. And when one lecturer said, I actually got that paper, I had to do that paper to save my degree in industrial relations because they wanted to get rid of it. Even though they're the most popular degrees, they're 3 to 5 times more popular than engineering degrees. So there is a deliberate movement there to attack it, and the only way we can really fix this issue for both, say, the small business accountants and bookkeepers want us to start IPM. They want us to opt into TBB so they know they can hire people that have access to the proper education and skilling in and around payroll. And in the C-suite, it's really the Human Resource Institute that is going to be our only primary competitor because they are not interested in going into what we do. And that's fine. All those payroll people trapped in that HR institute can will have somewhere else they can jump across and identify as with the certification and so on. Like you said, not every company will want to go down this path, but we'll finally have an option for those that want to.
Yeah. Yeah, they want to do it right and fortify their businesses, I think, and tap into that competitive advantage.
Yeah.
I've been writing a bit about that, about how payroll and time specifically can be competitive advantage in a lot of ways. So just to play devil's advocate a little bit, right? There's already multiple entities in Australia providing education. Some are owned by vendors, right? I think TAPS is owned by Dayforce, if I'm not mistaken. There's, there's the APA, and I think there's at least one or two more. Why do we need another one? I mean, obviously, I think you're taking on a much more, industry protecting and structural change to the way things are done. But do we need another payroll education entity? And what happens to those others? Do they get on board and maybe follow with you and support you, or how does that work?
So there's no kind of easy way to dance around this. There is there is no payroll association in Australia, period. Irrespective of what it is.
Oh, really? Okay. So the ones that we have now, are they more just commercial entities then? Or
they're all PSPs, payroll service providers. So they're all for profit. Now, the issue isn't should I work with them or should they work with me? The issue is when you're for profit, you're there to make money. You're not there to represent the interests of your competitors. That's what people need to understand. So, for instance, I have, when we created this draft of the certification, I liaise with half a dozen different recruitment companies. Because we're not a recruitment company. We're not interested in being one. We're not there to make money from people. We're there to promote certification, so proper education and skilled payroll practitioners to employers. So you have panels of recruitment companies. That's what you do. TAPS and APA have recruitment arms, right? So why would they have a panel and represent the interests of their competitors? Okay, so that's what people have got to understand, right? Now, the other thing too is they're not going to devote the time that I do representing the industry that you have to, that I haven't really made public. But for instance, I meet twice a day at the moment. Sometimes it's once a day with government, with regulators, with universities, with so many different committees that are standing up and so on, because you have to. Now, there is no one. There's a group of RTOs providing the government tripartite endorsed what we call payroll administrative skill set under what's called the payroll services diploma. So it's actually called a diploma of payroll services. TAPS have an exam that's their own making. It's not aligned with any vet or university qualification. Okay, so you can take that exam if you want. It looks okay, but it's not accredited, and it's not a part of the skilling and education framework that drives government funding for professions that are short. So I'm lining up in this paper a platform for us to punch into what we call the tripartite system, because that system is only through unions and employee groups and state governments.
I see.
And they're through something called jobs and skills councils. Now, I've had to meet with those councils, and then I'm going to be applying for them at the end of the year. Private associations can't opt into that TPB framework. Again, you have to think of Deloitte if they wanted to regulate the industry, or KPMG. It's not going to happen. Okay, so that's what I'm talking about. There's all the various things that we do, because that's why our purpose, our mission, building, skilling and educating the profession. Theirs is to make money. That's it, period. So I don't begrudge or have any issues. I've spoken to Tracy Hingham. She's lovely. She's done a lot for the profession over the years. Same with Jason Lowe. But I can't make them do things that are not in their interest. That's the short of it.
Understood.
I can't really, you got to remember too, if I start creating industry committees, I can't really invite exclusive PSPs in over other ones. Okay. I have to represent everyone in an unbiased way. So,
Do you have any support from the government? Do you have, say, what we would call a congressman or a senator or someone in your government of any level that's championing you and helping you out at all?
So
do you need that?
We have power bases is probably how I would best describe it. So there's really two power bases. To use the US terms, you've got, so your Democrats and your Republicans. In Australia, your Democrats are called Labor, which is we have a very strong Labor government at the moment, and our Republican equivalent are called Liberals, which I know can be very confusing because I know in the US system, Liberals are considered Democrats. So our power base is the Labor Party, and that's because, and you'll see this in my report, we have 53,000 payroll clerks, which is that low skill level, designated in the industry data. And we're working on a way to get them out of that category and into the professional stream. Now, if you jump that ship, so to speak, that can mean $500 million pay rise for almost 43,000 women, because it's the current stats are 83,000. So they're the meetings I'm having with government, and it's slowly getting up the echelon. But you've got to work with the government's power base, which are the unions. So I'm forging a path right now because when I got payroll manager created, that means technically I got a new profession that's not aligned with the clerks and it's in the managerial stream. So we had to check the constitution for the union that represents that award, which is called Professionals Australia. And we're looking at support through them. And then that's how you get access to the politicians. Now, the unofficial backdoor discussions I've had with Labor politicians is they're hugely supportive. And any of them that are ex-union secretaries that have worked in around enterprise agreements say you should always have payroll in the room. And that's where I say to them, do you realise payroll's being excluded because of HR? They're being kicked out. And then they get given this body, so to speak, to deliver. They don't have the resourcing, time, and then they don't have the pool to go, do you realise some of these agreements have illegal terms and conditions in it? And so on and so forth. So, yes, we have a power base and support. It's pretty much through the unions and Labor. We've tried a non-partisan approach, which meant we tried right-wing employer groups. They don't want to pay rise for payroll clerks and they don't want to pay rise for women. They haven't said as much, but I'm said, well, how else do you define what we're trying to do here? And say you're going to actively oppose it. So that's again what proper associations do. You have to navigate the political side of it.
A certain amount of lobbying.
So, exactly.
As we would call it.
Lobbying, and then being
I don't know if that's legal in every country, but lobbying here is a big deal.
It definitely is, and either if you've got the resources, you lobby directly, or you partner with a lobbying company, or if you opt into the right registered framework, if you're structured accordingly, because you can act as a licensor.
Do you have university support for this?
Yeah, we've got 4 universities on our industry panel. And
so that helps.
Yep. And we've got a what we call an RTO provider. So that they do the
and what is an RTO?
Registered Training Organisation. So they do those non-university courses. And that's who we did the first panel with to say, what do you think of the current payroll skill set? What do you want to change? What should it look like? And that's influenced our certifications. And in turn, that research that I did championed this funding to get the redevelopment of those qualifications.
Right. Yeah. And what's the progress on the body of knowledge? Are you guys where does that stand? What's kind of next for that?
So I've got 3 different things to roll out first, then pivot to the BOC. So we've got a rough domain map and how that would work. We've got 10 domains. The good news is when we do get to it, so I've just got to launch IPM, then we've got to launch the small business strategy for that certification. That means hopefully within 12 months and reaching a certain amount of certified professionals, we can opt into the TPB. Then I'll pivot to the large one while government is considering our request and our mapped out version of the degree. Then we'll launch that one. Then I'll be looking at the BOC. So I'm hoping to look at the BOC in a serious way in around 12 to 18 months with the draft. Now, the good news is half of it's already there because we're just going to leverage off like every BOC does. They all do the same thing. When you get to master's level, strategy, marketing, strategic human resource management, it's all the same stuff, right? Which are generally your foundational units for an MBA. So working back, we already have that. Working from the start, we already have the entry-level micro certifications. And going off that survey that we did to get payroll manager created, we identified 4 specialisations. So we want to look at that as well. And then that's when we start publishing and defining the payroll-specific entry and intermediate domains around the associate degree level. And that's when I get the first cut of that up and running, even just 50% of it might be there with what we want to put together. That's where I want to reach out to CIPP, payroll org in the US and say, hey, there's a lot of international potential here, which is generally what they do with a lot of BOCs. We could share the IP, benefit from it, and then look into regional or country domains. And then that opens up the door with, and that's why I've got universities on the panel to then go, oh, good, Ciaran. And we're already having discussions about using this payroll administrative skill set, which has 5 specific payroll units, and we're building on that. And really, because it's a high enough level in the RTO sector, we can have critical thinking assignments. So that pivots it nicely to a foundational degree or an associate degree. Then the universities go, great, now you've got what we can do to start coming to you and accrediting degrees from our sector, because that's what good professional associations do. You generally don't try to run your own degrees. You want to accredit everyone else's, because then you create a graduate pipeline for your profession. So see how this is already strategically starting to align up with so many problems that we have. I see a lot of individual, so GPA, Global Payroll Association, another PSP, but they're doing another great bit of work here trying to get an apprenticeship thing up and running in Sydney. But that's not how you do it, right? That's a piecemeal kind of little approach, whereas if you go down this route with the BOC, you get the entire university sector coming to you saying
the credibility comes with that, you're saying.
Credibility and competitiveness. So you're talking about competitive advantage. we will now be in there on every bachelor's degree that's printed out, because an associate degree is 16 units of a bachelor's degree, saying, would you like a career path? Currently, they all read around business degrees. Would you like a career path in accounting or HR? Payroll's not there. But going down this route, we can get payroll on there. And 2 of those 3 universities have said, yep, when you get that associate's degree, we'll look at automatically putting you on here and advertising you alongside those other professions. So you can see how this whole thing, the BOC is central to, if this thing was the cocoa, to be the cocoa and the flour.
Yeah, it's quite the linchpin on everything else that's going to come, it sounds like. So how far off before you feel like you'll have that in place?
So I need to
drafted.
Yeah, it's very easy to set arbitrary timelines. So what I've done is I've made it a milestone. So I need to achieve the first 2 milestones, then I can look at it. The reason being is pretty simple. I'll be resourced, and I can then start.
It's a heavy lift, I bet.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah.
So the concept's there, and it's important to sell the vision and the understanding, because that will help with the other prerequisite milestones.
Right. Will you need to have this audited in some way before you sort of finalize it?
Well, that's where the industry panels will come in. And committees.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of, think of it as self-accreditation. So we have to satisfy the requirements, for instance, for how the assessment framework would work, but we would have a panel of universities and RTOs, registered training organisations. So because they're the ones that are actually regulated by education regulators, and both have 2 RTOs have a regulator in Australia called ASQA, and the universities have one called TSCA. So then we say, okay, well, does this meet your regulatory obligation standards? And I've already started that conversation 18 months ago. That's how I found out about a BOC. They said, Ciaran, we can't do a degree for payroll because there's no BOC. And you're also not a profession.
Right. Does another one exist anywhere in the world? I don't know that it does.
I can't find one, and that's why
I don't think so.
Yeah, and that's why I thought I'd check where your labour statistics where you sit, and if you're not a profession in that country, chances are you don't have a BOC. And that's why I know there's not one. And look, if there's not one in the US, there's probably not going to be one. Is my opinion.
So if you're successful, which I assume you will be, right? And I hope you are in everything that you're doing. I applaud what you're doing. I think it's very bold and very necessary, and I love it. Do you think it's possible other countries will take, once this is up and running, maybe it's successful, it's showing progress. Do you think it's possible other countries could take this and begin to repeat it? Or do you expect that will happen? And could we get to a global standard of some sort?
Oh, totally. Totally. If HR can do it, we can do it. There's no doubt about it. So when you talk about, just with the 10 domains.
Oh no, man, the US, boy, we'll screw it up. We'll find a way. We're so capitalistic, right? I mean, there's, I wonder, right? If I don't know, there's a lot of hurdles I think that would have to happen, but I think this could be the way of like sort of setting a standard that others could start to emulate, that could become a global standard.
Yeah, most definitely. And that's why BOC, when I looked at the BOC objectively, I went, hang on, every one of these domains is either already universal, so international, at least half of them are. And even the rest, you can have universal principles before you, like a universal understanding of what is payroll relations before you even drill into any, country-specific stuff. In the US, yes, I see what you're saying with the US, it's a beast. But one thing the US does very well is if you can make money out of it, it'll
exactly
go pretty well,
That's what worries me. Too many people trying to make money off of it. But well, this is amazing. I mean, so what's next? What's next for you guys for the IPM and the rest of 2025 and on into 26?
So I want to launch IPM next month. That's a pretty big call, but I'm working very hard right
as a brand. You mean?
Yeah, and members can join. And hopefully by then too, we'll have this paper available. So I'll flick you a copy. I mean, you're on the industry panel. You're an international rep, so you'll get the advanced copy. And then I'll probably have a quick webinar so everyone can get across the broad stroke.
Yeah.
But as I said, it's called Creating the Payroll Profession in Australia. So it outlines a lot of what we've discussed. Why we need a BOC. What are the current problems? What are the gaps? What are the drivers? Why payroll's getting a hard time in the C-suite, and it's because of employment relations and so on. And then we launch the website. I've just got to get some contracts in place with some of our providers, like the CPE and certification provider. Then we move on to, and I'll be creating more subcommittees. So I've already had a chat to 3 different recruitment companies for a subcommittee around recruitment industry. They're really key to telling us what employers want, including things like a criminal history background check, because there's a lot of criminals working in payroll.
Yeah.
So then it'll be certifications will get launched, and those 2 initial certifications and 1 specialist certification are aimed at hitting our first demographic, which is the tax practitioners board. So that'll be my focus then, probably for the next 12 months. And in the background, that's when I'll probably start work on both the BOC and the bigger end certification. But that bigger end, we have to design that framework and how it's going to work with industry panels as well as the unions. The reason being is the unions are in those enterprise agreements, and they can say, we want a payroll manager in here, right? You guys don't get to skip out. And then that's where we can create a standard, and we're going to design that standard with the union. So that's kind of the way forward. And again,
are your unions woven into your government in a way to employment in that way, or is it more a choice?
No, they're woven in.
It's mandatory.
Yeah. So we have a lot of capability and knowledge gaps we need to fix for payroll. A lot of payroll people at the top end still don't understand the way industrial relations actually work and the difference between it and, say, employment relations. So we are a far more heavier lift democracy as opposed to the US. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. Your arbitration agreements in your workplace contracts are paid for by your employer. In Australia, that's what the Fair Work system covers, as well as minimum wage rates across 120, I think there's 123 modern awards now. It used to be 122. I know there's several under draft because we're having those conversations with unions. Now that goes to the Fair Work Commission, which is a federal entity. It's what's called a quasi-legal jurisdiction. It's not technically a legal jurisdiction under the Act. And they do the arbitration themselves. And they're stacked with commissioners. I think there's around 50 or 80 or something. But they're political appointments. So half of them are commissioners from a union background. Almost all of those union guys are not lawyers. Everyone thinks they're lawyers, and they're not.
They're union folks,
They're union folks. The other half are appointed from employer groups, so they're also political appointments. So that's the whole point. Now, you wouldn't have a neutral kind of government-funded arbitration system if you're a bit more right-aligned.
I'm very familiar with this. I talk about this on a podcast that should be coming out soon if it hasn't already, where I talked about my time in Hollywood in payroll. And one of the key things that I did was made good friends with the heads of unions, because the last thing they wanted to do was come in on a Monday and see that there was an error on some members' paychecks or something. So I had a great relationship such that they would come to me and not go to the media or whatever it might be. And we could solve those things together privately and kind of collaboratively versus, it being sort of an us against them. So I think there's a value in that, right? In payroll and even HR having this relationship with those guys.
I think there is in payroll, and you just gave a great summary of what payroll relationships is. ER, if a HR person has studied ER, your whole job is to block the unions out. And it is a mental deprogramming hurdle they have to try.
It's a battle. It's a battle.
Well, they have to try and get out because they think they're militant and hostile, and some are. Don't get me wrong. So we've got a huge corruption issue with a union in Victoria right now called the CFMEU, which is a construction one, but construction synonymous with organised crime. So that's a little bit different than dealing with, say, Professionals Australia.
It's kind of global too. I've seen some things around bridges in Italy and other stuff that's been a little nefarious. So
exactly right. So, but you don't pigeonhole the whole union movement because of one union. So, for instance, Professionals Australia, the one that we want to move over to, it represents accountants, lawyers, CEOs. They have CEOs, members, and so on. And they're a great one because the enterprise agreements they're involved with are very well run, very well structured. They're not militant, but they do appreciate someone taking carriage to minimise the risk of non-compliance, including the one thing that people forget to talk about in Australia, which is class action litigation data. Everyone talks about Fair Work Ombudsman data, which is important, but class action litigation data is a far better window into assessing your payroll risk in large enterprise. And your only threat with that is unions, or private litigation companies that are venture capitalist funded. But once you look at all that data in a separate subset, suddenly you've only got 5 risks to manage, and you know what they are. Right, and then there's your value proposition from a dollar point of view as to why you should be there and own carriage over the life cycle of the agreement, right? But they're all the capabilities we need to develop and filter through the BOC with frameworks and tests and data to show this is effective and this is why this person's empowered and this is how they're educated and so on.
Do you think that all of this structure and maturity around, the way you're going to educate and structure and sort of formalize the education, do you think it'll be any sort of a draw or a benefit to bringing in more talent into the space? Because right now we've always had this problem, right? You know the challenge, right? We don't have enough talent. We're losing people. It's never been a destination. It's always been a landing spot. Like, how do we change all that? But do you think this is a step in maybe getting people more geared towards this because there is a degree and there is a body of knowledge and a career path maybe?
Categorically, definitely. And a great example is to look at, I don't know if you studied this in your MBA, Pete, because I heard you've done one too.
Yes.
A great example of creating a profession is the project management profession. So there's several articles. It was born in the 1990s out of engineering, funny enough. They said it should be its own thing. Let's create a BOC.
Manufacturing.
Exactly. Let's create a BOC and certification around project management. And as a result, failed projects decreased from 25%, reduced to about 9%. And this is a worldwide report. So the point being is that's a great way of measuring the impact of moving up to a profession. So what I've talked about is more of the micro aspects that define a profession. So to answer your question categorically, yes, and it's been done before.
Yeah.
But I bet no one to date has realised we weren't a profession, have they? So unless you establish that, how do you know to move
one of the
forward?
things that you'll see in my research in the Payroll Profession Confidence Index, I don't know if I talked about this on my review in the episode, but if you look at the back in the demographics, one of the key notable things is there's a bottleneck for growth, right? There's not a lot of growth into that executive level because we actually ask it in a way of saying what is best describes your level, and we sort of offer it as executive management, right? Middle management, frontline management, whatever. And there's I think it was like in the teens of folks that consider themselves executives. And that's a problem because there's this big bottleneck in that middle management area. And there's no opportunity, to your point, to go to that higher level. And yet we have, some folks are rising, some folks are getting that opportunity, but I think their organizations are very forward in thinking and in progressing them. But I think that bottleneck is part of why people don't end up in payroll, is because they just don't see a path.
Yeah, I think too from entry level. So first of all, there is everyone will have heard of this term, war on talent. Well, that war on talent starts at the university. So you want to attract people into degrees. Now, when I spoke about the concept of certifications and degree alignment with universities, they leapt at that and went, great, because in the Australian sector, universities are for profit. They moved to a for profit model in the 90s, and it's propelled. And you just have so many, and that's why our population has a statistical boom in academia now. So in 1989, 15% of Australians had a degree. As of the last census, which was in 2021, I think 50% have a degree now. So to answer your question, yes, most definitely, but it starts to put us on the radar and create something called a graduate pipeline, and that's what all major professions have.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Wow, man, this is awesome. I love it for you and the IPM, man. I hope you'll keep coming back and giving us updates. One more thing I wanted to talk about before we go. You looked over the Payroll Profession Confidence Index. I know you guys have some research too. You mentioned to me there was you see some similarities in some things. What were some of those things, and what are your thoughts on it?
So you mentioned a couple of things that you were thinking of starting a page on all of the adverse comments that HR causes payroll.
Yes.
So remember some of the things I've mentioned previously, that's all the things that I've heard the past 5-6 years. HR's a problem. HR causes a lot of non-compliance issues. They exclusively kick us out.
They're abusive in a lot in They're abusive. I wrote that in my report. They're one of the most their payroll's closest partner by rating. Payroll rated it, and their closest partner. Yet they're the very partner who actually excludes them to a detriment.
That's right.
When they're charged with inclusion.
Yeah, and I think that's pure threat, and I've seen it before when I was consulting.
I think it is.
So and they would stuff it up, and then the payroll feedback we had was then we get it due to the fallout of them not knowing what they're doing, right? So, but it's really it's the world's best marketing term. Right, that's what they've been doing the past 20 years. Use us, but covertly, they've been specifically designed around employment relations to exclude unions, and that's where you see all this. There's no other way to put it, but I'm really not a big fan of things when HR comes in and says, "Well, we need to design the remuneration agreement. We need to create a value proposition. We need to design how we contribute towards the competitive advantage of the organisation." No, you don't. That's not your job.
Yeah,
right. Your job is to recruit, on board, do some conflict management and some adverse action if you need to dismiss someone, which you've got a whole process in Australia because of the arbitration system. So, and then they say, no, we're also responsible for payroll, but they end up outsourcing. And the recruitment industry really, it's even funny because they say to me, we don't know why HR exists in a lot of enterprises because they outsource the recruitment to us, but they're there for recruitment. So we're going to be very aggressive and forward and say, we're taking back payroll. It's ours now. It's not yours. And creating a framework around it, skilling, education, and we will be advocating for a chief payroll officer, and we'll be doing it through the union movement. So we will actively promoting through the union movement, grab us, because we'll also regulate. This is the last thing too, and this is a big piece of the paper. HR in Australia does not regulate itself at all. So there was a very famous case called the Mantle Group case, where the HR manager was brought before the Fair Work Commission, who clearly falsified an enterprise agreement and was caught out, and they referred his false statements to the Australian Federal Police for action. Now, I contacted the Australian HR Institute and said, what are you doing about this guy? Right? Are you going to make any announcement, the whole lot? And I used backdoor channels, and those backdoor channels came back to me and said, the CEO has just made sure he's no longer a member, and that's it. Nothing publicly discussed, nothing shown. And I'm like, what is the point of getting certified by HR if when they commit flagrant fraud in their own job relevant to it? What's the whole point?
Yeah.
So under our framework, obviously, we're going to opt into the TPB, Tax Practitioners Board. You have a very high standard of regulation in and around that, and it's also co-regulated by the federal government. And we will have registers. We will do the same thing that lawyers and the top professions do, self-regulate to the highest standard. You'll have a member number. People will be able to Google your member number to make sure you're currently certified. And then if you get struck for criminal stuff, you will be listed. Right.
Interesting.
So if a lawyer, for instance, is disbarred or kicked out of their legal jurisdiction that they're registered with, they're the most savage, they're the most brutal, savage cases. They're referred to the magistrate court in Australia for their law society, and they literally say struck from the register. That's it. That's it. It is
lose your license, that sort of thing. Yeah.
You're not practicing as a lawyer, mate. Done.
Yeah. So what else would you like folks to know about the IPM, about your work, about your progress, about what you're doing? Anything else to kind of round this out?
I guess just keep in mind of what professions do. There is a huge journey for payroll to go on going forward. There's going to be a couple of very confronting truths you'll have heard today. You're not a profession, I'm sorry. But now you know what the source of the problem is. We can now chart a course to move from Pinocchio to a real boy, okay?
Yeah.
We need to move. We as a profession internationally need to move past this jumping up and down, look at me. I get it. I sympathise with it. We should play a more active role, but we have to go down this path to do it. That's the period. Yeah. So when I do launch, I encourage everyone to join, irrespective of where you are in the world. We can start state chapters, and if you're connected with CIPP or Payroll Org, I would much prefer that we start collaborative efforts together. I'm hoping, I just looked up the conference for next year with Payroll Org in the US. I see it's at Tennessee in May.
Nashville.
No, sorry, Nashville. Yep. I'm going to try.
That is Tennessee. Yes.
There we go. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm terrible.
No, it's okay. It's the bigger, probably one of the bigger cities in Nashville or in Tennessee.
Cool. I'm going to try and get there because I want to meet some of the key players internationally, because I saw Jason was at the one this year.
Will you be at the CIPP ACE in Wales as well?
I haven't looked at that one. I might try to get to that one as well next
October.
year.
I'll be there. My first one. So October 1st to the 3rd. Anybody out there that's not registered, get registered. You can still make it. It's going to be a great event.
Is that this year or next year?
That is this year, this October 1st in Wales. I know it's kind of late, but if you can make that, that'd be a great one.
Yeah, that one might be just for resourcing reasons, might be a bit hard for us. But next year, I'm trying to get out there and have those discussions, because I really want to be in a room with Jason and other national ones to say, hey, we've got this, because this paper has international recommendations in it that I'm writing, right? So it's to help chart the course and get us to act collaboratively, start pooling the information that we know. So one of the challenges I know we do have with the Australian Bureau of Statistics is they said, actually, we might just start using US labour data. Now, if they do that, that's going to cause problems for the traction we've gained, because again, and I've checked in your the SOC, there is no payroll manager in SOC. There's HR manager under the manager stream, but there's no payroll manager. Now, I've done enough to help potentially Payroll Org if they want to put that case in to start that journey as well. Then we can leverage off the BOC and then start towards that. Now, I'm already saying that once I get the first cut of the BOC up in some kind of dry form, I want to collaborate with these other international.
Do you expect that in 2026?
I'm going to aim for the second half of it to at least have a draft paper on it and an outline of it. So the reason why I want to wait to then is I've got to get these other foundational papers done first,
right? Because
they highlight and kind of supply more context as to why we need it, right? So you got the context, then you can get into what's it going to look like, how's it going to work. You can have international themes and then subsets back. But I do want to flag with any senior executives or members out there of those Payroll Org, CIPP and so on, we have a problem with ER. ER has taken over payroll the past 20 years. This is a very serious issue and we need to hit back.
Employer relations.
Employment relations. We need to hit back,
Yeah.
and that's where I want to create the term payroll relations. That's payroll,
Yeah.
taking payroll back in the full spectrum of payroll. That's one of our 6 pillars for going forward for what we're doing.
Yeah, what are those pillars? Would you just go over that maybe?
Yeah, sure. I'm just going to bring up my email.
I think it'd be good to share that with everyone.
Yeah, certainly. So our new purpose going forward is pretty simple. It's building, skilling and educating the payroll profession. It's tagline. It's on the IPM logo. You'll see it everywhere. And we have 6 pillars. And all of this is discussed into what we needed to do. And it's really been 6 years of development to work out what we need to do. And that's what these are designed. So the first one is represent the payroll profession on all things skilling, education and self-regulation to government all levels. So in Australia, we have 3. And that's really important because the state governments control the funding for any industry skilling shortages that we have. So my discussions the past 2 months about what do you need from us for funding and how do we get identified as a skilling a profession that's short in skilling. And there's a whole story behind that, and it's hard because I've got a new profession created, but it's not recognised by unions or employers yet, right? So kind of in this weird no man's land with it. Anyway, the second part of that is we also represent with registered organisations on the left and registered organisations on the right, as well as registered organisations in the Tax Practitioners Board. Now, the unions, employer groups, and in the TPB, they are accounting and bookkeeping organisations. What's interesting in that was I thought we'd have some pushback or some, you might be trying to cut into our turf. Total opposite. The CEOs of all of the bookkeeping and accounting professions I've spoken with said, oh, thank God, please, we need a separate payroll professional entity in there. And the end state we want to achieve with that is the creation of a third agent. So there's 2, tax agent and BAS agent, which is bookkeeping agent, tax agent. We want to create a third called payroll tax agent. And we think we'll have support with them in due course. The second pillar is develop and implement national strategies that both position and empower payroll as the primary profession for all spectrums of payroll in small, medium, and large enterprises. So I've already covered how we're going to look at doing that. So in other words, we're going to put payroll back in charge of payroll is the short of it.
Yeah.
Continue to create and uplift the skill level of the payroll profession from skill levels 4, payroll officer, because that's where we sit, which is the second lowest, by the way, and 2, which is where payroll manager is. So that's diploma level, to skill level 1 in OSCAR. And that's where we want to do, where we can use our documents to supply to other international payroll associations. Say, hey, this is what we did and how we did it. So they can maybe but first be aware of this issue and the potential that, fixing these issues in your SOC and equivalent can help your profession with. The fourth pillar is develop and continuously improve the world's first payroll body of knowledge, the paybook, which supports the establishment of a national and, where possible, international payroll profession. The fifth pillar is develop and continuously improve certification and related education, including degrees in payroll and continuous professional education, or CPE, supported by the paybook. And it's really important to connect it all together, so we don't go down rabbit warrens and so on and so forth, or erroneous perceptions due to a handful of individuals. We really need a cross-section. And a great example of that is the PMI's, what are they called again? So they release a book every couple of years and they're up to a different version, which is where there's been major shifts in methodology for the project management body of knowledge. Our 7th edition, they just call it an edition. So they've released the 8th edition and so on. 5th is develop and continuously improve. I've already read that, sorry. The last one is collaborate with the union movement in the development and implementation of the aforementioned pillars and the introduction of payroll relations. So this is really important because the
payroll relations part.
Yep, the right-wing employer groups want to keep us down in the mud, want us diluted and not recognised as a feminised profession, which we should be. You only need 65% or higher to be recognised as a feminised industry. We're trapped and muddied with the general clerks in Australia, which keeps us at 57%. But if we can get pulled out on our own, which we're leading into is a possibility because we've got payroll manager created, so that expands the current low-level classification to 53,000 that we have, which is currently sitting at 83% women. We can start that journey now with government. And again, that's another full-time thing that we've got to do through all the states and territories, as well as, and they'll then filter into federal. So there are our 6 pillars, and that's what we're basically doing.
I love it. It's a lot. It's a lofty goal, man, but you're making progress. I wouldn't say slowly. I think you've made a lot of progress very quickly, and I'm sure there's still a lot left to go. But how can folks help? How can people get involved? What can they do now ahead of, everything being launched and kind of public?
Sure. So I can share, there was a post I did with, and I'm just focusing on results. I'm not going to get into much with opinions. I'm just going to get in there, do the work, start getting, to use a great Australian term, runs on the board. 2 major runs on the board that we had, and they're on LinkedIn. One was, I know, consolidating one post last month. We had payroll removed from HR manager in the Australian Bureau of Statistics. So I can share that.
You told me about that.
Yeah. And that was because in December last year, we got payroll manager created. So I used that to go back to the ABS, Australian Bureau of Statistics, and say, how can HR manage payroll when we've got a payroll manager?
Right.
And they said, okay, we agree. Let's remove it. And
I love it.
It was struck last month. So I made an announcement on LinkedIn. So what that is doing is it's starting to curate just simply the goals we're getting on the board and starting the conversations that need to occur when we launch about we're not a profession. This is what we need to do to create one. This is how we get payroll back and be back in charge of it. So once we do launch, and I'm looking at next month, please consider joining. We're going to have sponsorship and support. And anyone that's international, you can join if you like. Or what I recommend you, probably I would also like to see is some kind of committee or movement through your own national payroll organisations to reach out when you're ready with some kind of committee or framework or some kind of resourcing in there to say we're ready to collaborate on the paybook. I do want that to be joint owned. I don't want it to be locked down with any one specific money-making IP. I think the only way to go to fix this is internationally. As I've already kind of alluded to earlier in the interview, we're connected internationally more than we know through labour data. So if one country starts doing it, we want to start moving, creating waves in the pond for all of the countries because we can do that. Whereas, and as I've said, our labour statistics, they're looking at just copying the US, which might set us back if they go down that route.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. That's it's like trying to go do payroll using the US as your template. It's not going to work everywhere, right?
Yeah.
Well, look, Ciaran, this is really amazing, man. I love it, and I'm proud of you, and I'm congratulations on all the progress. Look, anything that I can do to help, I'm here to do it. If you'll send me all of the links, I will make sure that they're in the description so that we share them with folks and they can get engaged. I know you're on LinkedIn, but if you can give me the links to your organization, I will make sure we share that. And please come back, man. Keep us updated. Let us know what's going on. Let us know what we can do to help. Yeah, because I think we need more voices, right? Trying to echo this stuff.
Will do. Thank you. And Pete, for those that don't know, Pete is on our industry and skilling panel. He's our international rep. So thank you for your time and contribution, Pete. Pete will be getting an advanced copy of this paper before it goes live. So if you want to discuss it, look at it, give any feedback, and when I say go live, that's before it's formally submitted to government. We will publish a copy for everyone to review, and then when IPM's website's finished, we'll launch and open up, and perhaps we could have another discussion then, Pete, if you're open to it.
Absolutely,
go from there.
Man. We need to have a regular check-in. Instead of once a year, you need to come back more often. Let us know what your progress is. Let us know how we can help. I'm sure, I know there's going to be stumbles along the way and learnings, but all of this is for the greater good. And I'm hoping, look, I said this on this podcast with Jason Davenport, right? On the Source podcast I did with him around, is it time for a global standard? Is it time for a global consortium, a global agency or organization, I mean? And so maybe that'll happen. Maybe this could be part of the groundwork for that. Maybe we're going to make that progress at some point. I think we need it. I think it's time, right? And maybe we need a global payroll certification, right, from some governing body. And if there's a payroll book of knowledge for the globe, right? Yep, that could be it. We need something.
Yeah, the Safety Institute did something similar, so we could discuss that with them at some other time. They've got, say, global themes that meet definitions of standards, and then you can see what they've done and say, we're not going to tell you exactly how to certify, but here's all the current themes, reference to a block, so on and so forth. And then that got rolled out to about half a dozen countries: US, Canada, Australia, Singapore, Germany were all signed signatories of that. We could do something similar for sure.
I love it. Ciaran, keep doing what you're doing, man. Thank you so much for sharing. And anything we can do, you just let us know. And appreciate everyone.